What's up, guys? D-Rock1992 here. Recently, about a week ago, I watched the movie Sabotage. And I'll have that review posted later with this video and the next video that I'm going to do that's kind of tied into this movie. While Sabotage wasn't the best movie ever, it was okay and it was good enough. It was bolstered by the presence of one Arnold Schwarzenegger. The Terminator, the Governator, whatever you want to call him. This video is about him. It is the About Actor video on Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's about time I do one as well, because I've gone a long time, because for those of you who have followed the About videos that I've done, haven't done them yet. Haven't done an Arnold video yet that talks about his career and his movies. I thought about postponing it even further until I watched a more prominent movie of his. But, I said, what the heck? I'll do a video on Arnold right now. I watched that movie Sabotage. And yeah, while I thought it wasn't great, it was good enough. And it did have Arnold in it, which is, quite frankly, pretty good for any movie, having this guy. His career has definitely been action-packed, to say it it's just, yeah, his career has been action-packed. He's been in a lot of action-type movies. He's also kind of branched off a little bit into comedy, with okay results, But, yeah, when you think of Arnold, you think of the Terminator, you think of the Governator, you think of great action films that are among the best action films of all time. And this guy has really stamped his legacy with those movies. So without further ado, I'm going to get right into it. So his first movie was a lead role, actually. It came out in 1969, and he played Hercules, the Greek mythology hero. The man who made 12... Well, anyway, the Greek mythology hero. So, he did a movie called Hercules in New York. And if you never heard of it, then pretty much, I don't blame you. The movie, I think itself, was a bad movie anyway. It wasn't very good. But Arnold was about 22 years old. That Arnold, actually, it is one of the few movies, it's one of the films Arnold actually regrets being in. Even though it was his first movie, and even though it started his career. He probably wanted another better movie to distinguish himself for. So yeah, Hercules in New York was the first movie. And then the next couple of years he was in a few other movies, not really distinguishing himself all too much. Not that one type of role, but one movie that did give him attention was a documentary called Pumping Iron. A docudrama. Pumping Iron. Arnold Schwarzenegger in his earlier years was a bodybuilder. He won a lot of what they called Mr. Olympia competitions. He was a big winner of those. Mr. Olympia. And he was Mr. Olympia, I think, like 4 years in a row or something like that. And this one kind of talks about him and one of his rivals, Lou Ferrigno, who you might better know as the Hulk in the 1970s TV series, The Incredible Hulk, something like that. But anyway, yeah. That was... It pretty much opened viewers up to the world of bodybuilding in particular. And it was a docudrama, a movie that really did get great reviews. It definitely... It talked about the bodybuilding, and it also opened a lot of viewers up to the world of Arnold Schwarzenegger. The interesting world of him. And it probably, when people saw it probably was like, okay, this guy could be something. Turns out, the guy was something. In 1982 and 1984, he did a couple Conan movies. 1982 was Conan the Barbarian. 1984 was the sequel, Conan the Destroyer. For those of you who don't know, Conan the Barbarian is a fictional sword and sorcery hero. And he's been adapted to books, comics, and those films that I mentioned. Anyway, this was really, the first big film. These two were the first big films that Arnold really did. And, yeah, he definitely achieved some popularity. But also in 1984, he did another movie that is definitely his breakout. This was the movie that got people talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is the one that solidified him. The Terminator. 1984. It was the first Terminator movie, which was an extreme hit. In fact, on Rotten Tomatoes, The Terminator is a 100% rating. One of the rare films that actually got that rating, 100%. So The Terminator, those of you who know, for those of you who don't know, which I imagine aren't a lot of people, this movie is about Arnold is the Terminator, and he is sent from the future to kill John Connor. I haven't watched, actually, to tell you the truth, I haven't watched the entire movie. I may have watched parts of The Terminator a long time ago, but I definitely have to watch it sometime in its full entirety. Because this movie is a classic. It really is. And it really, again, established Arnold as a superstar. I think this one or the sequel to it. This one or the sequel. Well, the Terminator movies. There were actually a few of them. The Terminator came out in 1984. The sequel, Terminator 2 Judgment Day, a lot of people actually do think that Terminator 2 is better than the first. So it is one of those rare sequels that people think is better than the original. Terminator 2 Judgment Day came out in 1991. Then we had to wait until 2003 to get another sequel, Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines. He was an uncredited... Terminator Salvation in 2009 was the fourth Terminator film. Arnold wasn't in it. Arnold had an uncredited... It said that in that movie he was an uncredited CGI recreation of likeness imposed on a stand-in. Basically, Arnold wasn't in this movie. That's, I think, basically what it is. He was not in this movie. And then this year he came out with Terminator Genesis, the fifth Terminator movie, and he was back in that Terminator movie. Some of the best lines of Arnold Schwarzenegger is also known for his one-liners, his type of one-liners, and a lot of them came from the Terminator movies, like "I'll be back," Hasta la vista, baby. That one. The other one. Those two I can think off the top of my head. But, yeah, I mean, Arnold, definitely, this was really one of the first, Conan, in Conan he had a popular line as well. I can't remember the entire thing, though, so I'm not going to say it, but you'll know it if you watch the movie, pretty much. But yeah, the Terminator movies, Terminator 2 Judgment Day, just from looking at it, looking at the reviews of it, it got a 93% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. So that's very good for a sequel, for sure. And then, like I said, a lot of people like that movie better than the original. Terminator 3, in particular, it received a 70% rating. Definitely not as good as the first two, but Terminator 3 isn't one you really think of as the best. I mean, obviously the first two stand up. Terminator Salvation, the fourth film, Arnold wasn't even in the movie, but, and because of that, I think it suffered a 33% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes. It just didn't, it just wasn't a success. But, Terminator Genisys came out just this year. It came out July 1st, and I'll be talking more about that movie when I do my July movie reviews, because it came out July 1st. But, I mean, Arnold is the main character in this movie. He really is. This movie is Arnold's movie, in my opinion. Still. And it probably wasn't his fault. It probably wasn't his fault at all, but on Rotten Tomatoes, the movie got a 26% rating, the lowest rated in the Terminator series, film series. So it probably was because of the story and whatnot. I haven't seen Terminator Genisys yet. I need to see a Terminator movie in its entirety, definitely. I've seen Terminator Salvation. I've seen parts of that. And I think I've seen parts of the first two. I don't think I ever saw the third, but I definitely have got to get on that. I definitely have to watch those. And then he did some other films in the 80s, some other great action films. Red Sonja in 1985, Raw Deal in 1986, which are, for a lot of die-hard Arnold fans, you'll know about these movies. Red Heat in 1988. But 1985 was another really popular movie, Arnold movie, and this is one, I love this movie. I watched it on, I DVR recorded it. It came on, American Movie Classics, AMC channel. Commando. That movie is awesome. Commando is about Colonel John Matrix, who is played by Arnold, who is a retired agent of some sort. Anyway, his daughter gets kidnapped, and he basically has to fight basically has to fight a small army to get her back. And it is, you see this movie, it's awesome. It's an awesome action movie. It really is. It is straight up action. You see one man take on an entire army. It kind of has a Die Hard feel to it, for sure. Die Hard came out in 1989, after the Commando movie, but you can compare a lot of these movies to Die Hard, no problem. But yeah, Commando was an awesome movie. I really loved it. It's not the kind of movie that's going to win an Academy Award or anything like that, but it doesn't need to. It was just an awesome movie. And it has some other Arnold one-liners as well. Commando has um, to this guy, there's this one line that I'm thinking of off the top of my head, but I can't really think of it. One of the lines, and I'm not sure if it's from this movie, he goes, "Bennett, lay off... no. You need to lay off some steam, Bennett." I know my Arnold accent is inconsistent, but my Arnold impersonation, I can do that just as well as I mean, it's one of my best, honestly. But yeah, Commando is definitely a well-known Arnold movie. 1987, he came out with Predator, definitely one of his best, most well-known movies of all time. Predator had the famous line, "Get to the chopper!" And it's him and a group of other people that have to fight these alien species of some sort. I've never watched Predator, honestly. I never have. I'd like to watch it someday for sure. It definitely is a classic Arnold movie. They did a sequel to it, Predator II, which sucked, from what I've heard. And then they crossed over Alien vs. Predator, which they did 2 of those movies, which did not do very well at all. The original is really, from what I've heard, the best movie out of the whole series, by far. In 1987, he also did a movie called The Running Man, one of a well-known role. I don't really know anything about it, but it is a well-known Arnold role from the 80s. In 1988, you really see Arnold get into comedy, in particular. In 1988, he stars with Danny DeVito in the movie Twins. It's about a tall twin and a short twin, basically. And Twins, yeah, really, looking at his filmography, it was really the first comedic role that Arnold tried out. The first big comedic role, at least, that Arnold tried out. And Twins is actually a pretty good success. Well, actually, not really. Rotten Tomatoes gave it 38%, but it did make a lot of money. Over $216 million on an $18 million budget. And real quick before I go on, the reviews for Predator, the Predator movie, was, I'm looking for Rotten Tomatoes, 78%, which is very good. Very good. It's a very serviceable 78%. It's very good. Commando, in particular, got a 69%, which is good. I mean, it's a passing review, definitely. It's not rotten. So I just wanted to mention those 2 in particular. Now, as we enter the 1990s, Arnold was very popular in the 1980s with great action films. He kind of gets into the sci-fi genre in 1990. He did get into the sci-fi genre with Predator. That was definite. But he starts out the 90s in style with the movie Total Recall. And it stars him and Sharon Stone. And I think what this film, I've never seen the film, but I know it's about this brain chip that's implanted in Arnold. And it's about this brain chip that's implanted in Arnold. And he has to determine where it came from, something like that. And it was, all I know is that the movie was a big success. On a $50 to $60 million budget, it made over $261 million. And critically, it got an 84% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is very good. it was a film that also got Sharon Stone notoriety as an actress. And yeah, this movie stands up as one of Arnold's best movies. Also in 1990, he does a lighter film, a lighter, more kind-hearted type film, Kindergarten Cop. This one I have watched, and I like Kindergarten Cop a lot. This is where he plays a detective who has to go undercover in a kindergarten class. He's the teacher, the substitute teacher of a kindergarten class, and he has to catch a drug dealer before he can get to his ex-wife and son, who are also working in the same school that Arnold's in. So this one has the famous Arnold line, "It's not a tumor." And but yeah, Kindergarten Cop it got mixed reviews. It got a 51% on Rotten Tomatoes, but it was very successful at the box office. On a $15 million budget, it made $202 million. From all the movies I've been mentioning, the box office totals and whatnot, it is also clear that Arnold is a huge box office star, as well as an action star, in this period of time, in the 80s and early 90s. So Kindergarten Cop, I highly recommend Kindergarten Cop. It's a sweet film. Last Action Hero came out in 1993, and it was I forget what the film's about. It's kind of a spoof movie, I think, something like that. But yeah, it's one of Arnold's well-known films. And it got a 37% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, so it didn't do well, but still, it is considered one of Arnold's best. So I had to mention it. A lot of people consider 1994's True Lies Arnold's best movie. And I watched True Lies, and I like the film. It's a good film. It's not as good as Commando, though, in my opinion. But True Lies, it's about this agent. Arnold's an agent who tries to find out if his wife's cheating on him or not. Turns out she isn't, but she's actually, I gotta kind of think about the plot here. And actually, what's interesting about True Lies is that at the time of its release, it was the most expensive movie ever made. And it did very well at the box office. And True Lies was also a huge success. 72% on Rotten Tomatoes, so it's good. Definitely. But yeah, this movie is about, the wife doesn't know what Arnold does, that Arnold is an agent, and together they both have to defeat these terrorists from unleashing havoc in America, basically. So True Lies is definitely one of the classic Arnold movies, and I liked the movie when I watched it, definitely. In 1994, he takes another stab at comedy with the movie Junior. He also does this movie with Danny DeVito, and this isn't a sequel to Twins at all, or anything like that. But Junior was another film that Arnold kind of put his comedic chops in, basically. Then, in the late 90s, you saw him start to fall a little bit. His box office appeal started to fall. I think 1996, Jingle All the Way was a bad movie. But then, the epic bad movie came out in 1997, Batman and Robin. And a lot of comic book fans, if any comic book fans are watching this video right now, or end up watching this video, they're probably going to cringe at Batman and Robin. I've watched the movie before, and it's okay, I think, you know. It's an alright movie. I mean, Arnold, though, is miscast as Mr. Freeze. He really is. You know, he plays Mr. Freeze, and he has a lot of corny, pretty awful one-liners in the movie, you know, pertaining to ice, basically. There's a few of them that I'm trying to think about, but yeah, Batman and Robin was a huge failure. It almost destroyed the Batman franchise until Batman Begins back in 2005, but point is, Arnold was definitely miscast in this film. So as you kind of get into the late 90s and whatnot, yeah, Arnold definitely lost some of his appeal. He was in a string of bad movies. And then in 2003, his last starring role until the 2010s was Terminator III: Rise of the Machines, which I mentioned, 70% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, so it's not bad. It was a good review, but Terminator 3 just couldn't stand up to the other two Terminator films. And then Arnold went off to become governor of California. Became governor of California. So he had a few uncredited roles in between his governorship of California. He was in Around the World in 80 Days in a very small role, the film adaptation of the book Around the World in 80 Days. Like I mentioned, he was uncredited in Terminator Salvation, although he really wasn't in it. He wasn't physically in the movie. It's just a CGI recreation of his likeness that was in this film. But in 2010, he starts another franchise. You know, he had the Terminator. The Terminator franchise is, of course, well-known. Remarkably well-known. But while uncredited, he was in 2010's The Expendables. And I've reviewed all three Expendables movies, so if you want to see those reviews of those three movies, I have them on my channel. Check them out, definitely. So he plays a rival of Sylvester Stallone's character, and he is in the first Expendables, second Expendables, and Expendables 3. So he's in all of them. The first one's uncredited, 2 is a supporting role, 3 is a supporting role. So he is in those films. 2013 comes around, and he stars in the movie The Last Stand, and he has a starring role in this film. His first starring role since 2003's Terminator 3. So it's been 10 years since he's had a starring role in a movie. But The Last Stand definitely makes it a big a starring role for him. And Arnold, in this movie, the movie itself, it really was not a success box office-wise. $45 million budget, $48 million at the box office. And The Last Stand, it also got a 60% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which isn't bad at all. It's just mixed, kind of. It's more mixed than anything. But this was one of the few Arnold movies that didn't get the box office numbers. 2013, he reunites with Sylvester Stallone in the movie Escape Plan. And Escape Plan is about these guys. One of the two guys has a prison, created a prison which is impossible to escape from. But when the guy who created the prison is actually in the prison he created, he has to get the help of one of the other guys, either Stallone or Schwarzenegger, to get out of that prison. I've never watched the film, but I kind of know what the plot is. Critically, 49% on Rotten Tomatoes, so mixed. And on a $50 million budget, it made $137 million. So it wasn't bad. It just wasn't Arnold. It just wasn't Arnold-like for his box office totals. And then, like I mentioned, the movie Sabotage, the movie I did a review on, I watched recently. I thought the movie was okay. It wasn't anything special, though. It really wasn't. And then, the movies he was in. As I mentioned, this year he was in Terminator Genisys, his first actual appearance in a Terminator movie since Terminator 3 in 2003. So, while I think a lot of people liked his performance in Terminator Genisys, the movie itself didn't do very well. So there you go. And then, actually earlier this year, he stars in a zombie movie. Of all types of movies he could be in, he stars in a zombie movie. It's a post-apocalyptic drama film, but it basically is a zombie movie. It is a film called Maggie. And in this film, Arnold is a loving father who has to rescue his daughter from a zombie that is inside of her, basically. I think that's what it is, essentially. But, this really is a departure. He did a horror film before, a horror-themed film, the movie End of Days in 1999, but this really is a departure from normal Arnold Schwarzenegger films. And the movie didn't do... It was an independent film. You know, very much an independent film. It got a 53% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which isn't bad at all or anything like that, but just the movie itself was sort of independent. And it's, you know, there are people that say it's a good thing for this guy to have that type of role in his resume, to kind of go outside the box, go outside his comfort zone, and do a role that he's not as well known for. And Arnold definitely did that with this movie. Because, you know, primarily, he is an action star. There's no doubt about that. But he has made some attempts to get outside of that action hero genre. He's gotten into comedy a little bit. He's gotten into horror films. So he's even had some dramatic performances. I think Maggie itself was a dramatic performance for him. So he's kind of showing off his acting chops as well. You know, nobody will... Arnold Schwarzenegger is not the greatest actor alive. He isn't. But good for him for trying out different roles and kind of padding up his acting resume in many different ways. Kind of varying it out. And I kudos to him. It's a good thing. Now, as far as other films coming in the filmography of Arnold Schwarzenegger, I do believe there is a third Conan movie that's coming out. I don't know if it's going to be starring him or not. It may be, I'm not really sure, but I do know that a third one is in development at this moment. Arnold is also going to be in some Terminator movies in the near future. He is going to be... I think the studio is fast-tracking a few sequels for the film. There are going to be sequels to Terminator Genisys. Terminator Genisys is sort of... I don't know if it's a reboot. I don't think it's a reboot, but it kind of is... they're just going to continue off of that story of that Terminator Genisys had, and Arnold is going to be in those films. I think he might have said at least one or something like that. That's pretty much all the news I've heard on Arnold for movies coming up. So as I mentioned, you know, the box office numbers recently for Arnold The Last Stand wasn't a great box office draw. Sabotage was a box office bomb, actually. Escape Plan actually made a little bit of money, but just not Arnold money. Recently, he is definitely not the box office draw that he once was. And that could be a number of factors. One of them, and I think it's the biggest one, is that he's getting old. He's in his 60s right now, and he's just not the bankable star that he once was. Although he is trying to make a comeback of sorts, with all that. Another one is a more personal reason. He did have an affair with, he cheated on his wife, Maria Shriver. That pissed a lot of people off. Probably a lot of Arnold fans were not very happy with him and what he did, That could be a reason. Could be. I'm not saying it is. So, but it could be. It also could be, like I mentioned, that he's getting older. That he's not the bankable young action star that he once was. So he's definitely not making Liam Neeson type money. Liam Neeson's one of those guys who, at an older age, he's in his 60s, he's still bringing in the bucks, playing action roles. Now, could Arnold be one of those guys? Eventually become one of those middle-aged action heroes who actually has a good draw? That remains yet to be answered, but he's trying at least. He's definitely trying. And some of the films actually are, the only one I've watched recently, actually the only two are Sabotage and Expendables 3. But yeah, he's trying to make an attempt to resurrect his career, and I think he's done it. I think he has resurrected his career, but time will tell if the box office agrees that he has resurrected his career. That time will tell. But anyway, actually now I'm going to move into his television career, and it's not a big one. He had a lot of television. He had a few television roles when he was starting out as an actor. He hasn't needed to be in television because he's a big movie star. The one I'm going to mention is he was in the season finale of 2.5 Men, which came as a huge surprise to me. Because, 2.5 Men is one of my favorite comedies. I really like it. The season finale came on, and, I was expecting some guest stars. I wasn't expecting Arnold, and when he came on the screen, it's like, wow, that's something. He's in the finale. I don't know why, but he's in the finale. And he did a good job. I'm just going to mention here the Guns N' Roses song You Could Be Mine from 1991. The music video for it depicts Schwarzenegger as the Terminator. So it's if you've ever seen the video before, they kind of integrate him into their video. Basically, and he was in a few other music videos, but Guns N' Roses' You Could Be Mine was a very well-known music video from him. So Arnold Schwarzenegger, the guy is definitely a controversial figure right now with the whole cheating on his wife sort of thing. But make no mistake about it, this guy's a star. This guy, he isn't the star that he used to be. And he is trying to make a comeback from his glory come back. He's trying to go back to his glory days where he was making he had his Terminator, he had his Commando, he had his Predator, he had his Total Recall. He's trying to get back to that level. Will it happen? I don't know. Time will tell. But make no mistake about it, this guy is one of the greatest action heroes that we've ever had, if not the greatest. The guy just has so much charisma, a lot of one-liners for one thing. He's got a lot of charisma, a lot of one-liners. He is just, while he isn't the best actor around, he definitely isn't. He has made attempts to try to better his acting. In the roles that I mentioned, the comedy roles and that horror role that I mentioned. But yeah, make no mistake about it. Arnold is definitely one of the greatest action stars to ever live. And thank you, Arnold, basically, for giving us great action movies over the years and doing your audience a huge favor. A huge favor, delight, whatever you want to call it. He's one of the best. So that is it for my my video on Arnold Schwarzenegger. D-Rock 1992 out.